So today's video is inspired by a high handicapper that I've just finished with, who at the start told me that he was generally happy with the direction he hit his irons, but felt that it really cost him a lot of distance. And his opening shot with his 9-iron, literally decent clubhead speed, was round about 90 yards carry, but the ball launched high and just never went forward. And towards the end though, we got that launch angle down, we got lovely ball and then ground contact, and picked up almost 40 yards with his best one, but consistently over 30 yards longer with every iron in the bag. So I know what you're thinking, it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? So he generally swung the club really, really well and set up nicely to the golf ball, but when he swung, he was very narrow with his stance, and as he swung, kind of launched the ball way up in the air. So you can see there, nearly 37-degree launch angle, low point 2.6 inches behind, ball speed 78 miles an hour, and the carry there at 100 yards. So that actually wasn't a million miles off what he did with his very first one. So we spoke about the importance of delivering the club so that he could get certainly ball on them first, and kind of talk to him a bit more how the best players in the world deliver the club, which I think very occasionally he said he'd hit one that would go further, but he had no idea how to do it. Now, without getting too much into the technical stuff, I've got swing catalysts, so we were able to see how he moved. And one of the key things for him is he generates his speed predominantly from moving side to side. So a very narrow stance made it incredibly difficult for him to actually generate the speed that he should do. So we initially widened his stance. But we also noticed that once he widened his stance, he would move his pressure and weight right over his right foot, which made it incredibly difficult on the way down to get across far enough so that the low point was ahead. So even though we widened his stance, it kind of got him a bit closer with his low point, but it was still either hitting the ground or just adding tons of loft. So the first thing we said is that nice wider stance. We then said at address, we wanted to feel that maybe the sternum was a little bit more kind of in line with the ball or even slightly ahead of the ball, feeling much more pressure on that left foot. And as soon as we did that, and we saw something very similar to that, how the low point moved ahead of the golf ball, the launch angle reduced massively to under 30 degrees. We could see the low points ahead, so the club's now traveling down, and a huge jump to 132 yards. Now, he wasn't exactly those numbers. I'm a little bit quicker there. But straight away, just from starting on that left side, we noticed that in the swing, he then didn't move his weight as much on the way back. So he was much more over the golf ball. And then from there, he was able to shift towards the target and get that low point ahead. And it was really simple. He said straight away that he felt he hadn't moved this way as much in the backswing, so he didn't have to move as far in a very short space of time in order to get that strike. And it is good because even though he was a high handicapper, I think he got pretty good awareness as to what was happening in his golf swing. So he said, right, that's a really simple change of feeling initially that instead of as I set up to the ball, feeling like my sternum's behind the ball, feeling like I'm much more in line with maybe the front of the ball, and then make another swing. And again, we noticed the low point move ahead, the launch angle go down, and distance picking up. So, more so when he was away from me, I said it's important when you're practicing, and where he practices, there's top tracer, so it doesn't give a lot of club data and doesn't certainly talk about angle of attack, but did give launch angle. So I said for him, he was 37 degrees of loft at impact to begin with, and potentially worse than that on some of his bad ones. So we said anything under 30 degrees would be a win. So we said, right, could we really exaggerate the feel? So what we'd want is we want to feel at address that we're a bit into our left side. We feel that we don't move our weight. The pressure will shift because your arms and club go that way. But once he was getting towards the top, we wanted him to feel like he moved even more towards the target, and said, even if you were to miss-hit a couple, just do it and see what it felt like. So he set up to the golf ball, felt left-sided, focused on the move, and it really blew his mind as to how far ahead he could move the low point and how much more distance he picked up. So obviously he was delighted by the result, but he then said something which maybe caught me a little bit off guard. He said as good as the shot was, he felt that he'd hit the ground way too much. And I kind of explained to him that when his low point was behind the golf ball, if he'd have been hitting the ground a lot, the ball would have been going nowhere. So he kind of got used to just trying to manage how high the club came back so that he could almost just miss the ground and still get enough club on the ball. And he did say that with the shorter shafted irons, he found it relatively easy. But as he got into kind of even 6, 5, just no kind of strike at all. So I said, right, as long as that low point is in the ground, and if it's 3 inches ahead, we don't mind feeling that there's a little bit more interaction with the club, and if you're on the driver into the mat or the golf course into the turf. But loved the feeling of being a little bit left-sided, feeling that the weight doesn't move, and then his first move being towards the target, which is going to get much more of this position at impact. So we said, right, let's get that set, and to finish off, we said we want to really feel we exaggerate it and see how low we could get that launch angle. So even though not the best one, compared to where he was at 2.5 inches behind, now 2.5 inches ahead. Now I'm swinging quicker than him, so that's where I'm seeing a little bit more distance. But he did make the comment that even though he felt like he was much more in front of the golf ball and actually felt like he could really miss-hit one, it probably wasn't going to be the case. Now I know when I've spoken about reducing loft on videos in the past, golfers have said, well, that's ridiculous. I don't want to de-loft because when I get into things like 4-iron, I can't get the ball in the air. What you need to remember is if you're going to de-loft the golf club even a little bit, it's going to help get ball and then ground contact. If your swing speed is somebody who, by de-lofting a 4-iron or a 5-iron, means that you can't get the ball in the air, that means that the equipment's wrong for you. You should be putting clubs, hybrids, lofted fairway woods in the bag that allow you to swing the club correctly, deliver the club correctly, and still get good results. Remember, you should never be fitting your golf swing to the club. You should always have product, equipment that allows you to make your best swing that gives you the best result. So I can't promise you're going to pick up 30, 40 yards with every iron like the high handicapper did. But if you're somebody who struggles with contact with irons and maybe feels that you don't hit the ball as far as you should, work through that video, re-watch it, put that into practice, and I guarantee you'll hit the ball better, you'll hit the ball further, and it's much more fun hitting 9-iron rather than 6-iron into every green.